How are popes elected? In this episode, we'll be looking at the historical analysis of papal elections and the conclave. The election of a pope is one of the most significant events in the Catholic Church, as it determines the spiritual leader of over 2 billion Catholics worldwide. While the core principles of selecting a pope has remained constant, that is, the election of the Bishop of Rome, the process has evolved considerably over the centuries. Therefore, in this series, we will examine how papal elections have changed and transformed from the early church to the present day. In the earliest days of Christianity, that is from the 1st to 5th century, popes were chosen much like bishops in the Christian communities. The clergy and laity of Rome would gather to elect a new pope, often by acclamation. The process was largely informal, with Roman Christians selecting a candidate based on holiness, on leadership qualities, and doctrinal soundness. However, external influences, including interference from Roman emperors and local political factions, often played a role. By the 6th century, the role of clergy in papal elections became more formalized. Pope Symmachus, whose pontificate was from 498 to 514, introduced a rule that a pope should be elected without external interference. However, conflicts between factions within the church, as well as pressure from Byzantine and Frankish rulers, often disrupted elections. But in 1059, Pope Nicholas II issued the In Nomine Domini decree, which restricted papal elections to the College of Cardinals and removed direct lay participation. This decree laid the foundation for the modern papal conclave. However, secular rulers, such as the Holy Roman Emperors, continued to exert influence. The next major reform came under Pope Alexander III, whose pontificate was from 1159 to 1181. He was the pope who convened the Third Lateran Council. This council established that only cardinals could elect the pope, and a 2/3 majority was required for a valid election, a rule that persists to this day. Now we look at the medieval reforms from 13th to 16th century. The term conclave, from the Latin cum clave, meaning with a key, originated in the 13th century after a prolonged election following the death of Pope Clement IV, who reigned from 1265 to 1268, during which cardinals delayed choosing a new pope for nearly 3 years. Pope Gregory X established strict conclave procedures at the Second Council of Lyon in 1274. Cardinals were locked in a room and denied luxuries to encourage a swift decision. During the Renaissance, however, political influence from European monarchs, particularly Spain and France, played a significant role in elections. Cardinals often formed factions loyal to different kingdoms, making elections highly political affairs. But then came the modernization of papal elections from the 17th to 19th century. And so as the papal states declined and the power of European monarchs weakened, popes sought to regain control over elections. In 1621, Pope Gregory XV established detailed rules for conclaves, including secret ballots, a 2/3 majority requirement, and procedural secrecy. But by the 19th century, the influence of secular rulers declined, particularly after the unification of Italy in 1870, which ended the papal states. Pope Pius IX, whose pontificate was from 1846 to 1878, was the last pope elected under the shadow of significant secular interference. The 20th and 21st century saw a standardization and media influence in the papal election. The 20th century saw further refinements to papal elections. One of the most significant modern changes came in 1903 when Pope Pius X, whose pontificate was from 1903 to 1914, abolished the centuries-old practice of jus exclusive, the right of Catholic monarchs, such as those of Austria, France, and Spain, to veto a papal candidate. This reform further safeguarded the conclave from external political interference. Later, Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II introduced reforms, including setting an age limit of 80 for cardinal electors. Pope John Paul II issued a decree Universi Dominici Gregis, which remains the governing document for conclaves. It reaffirmed the two-thirds majority rule and streamlined the election process. Today, papal elections follow a strict procedure. 1. Conclave secrecy. Cardinals gather in the Sistine Chapel, disconnected from the outside world. The second procedure is voting process. A series of secret ballots is held until one candidate receives a two-thirds majority. Third is the white or black smoke. White smoke from the Sistine Chapel indicates a successful election. Black smoke signifies an inconclusive vote. Then comes the Habemus Papam announcement. The elected pope is presented to the public at the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. An important question then is, what happens when a pope dies? When a pope dies or resigns, as in the case of Benedict XVI in 2013, the governance of the church temporarily passes to the Camerlengo, who is the Chamberlain, a senior cardinal appointed to oversee the transition. The Camerlengo is responsible for verifying the Pope's death, securing the Vatican, and preparing for the conclave. Some key steps taken after Pope's death include verification of death. Traditionally, the Camerlengo taps the Pope's forehead 3 times with a silver hammer, calling him by his baptismal name. If there is no response, he declares the Pope dead. Though this ritual is less emphasized today, but the Camerlengo still officially confirms the Pope's passing. Secondly, breaking the papal ring. The Camerlengo destroys the fisherman's ring, a signet used for paper documents to prevent forgery. Third, announcement of death. The Cardinal Dean, who is the head of the College of Cardinals, or another senior figure, announces the Pope's death to the world. Fourth is the 9 days of mourning, in Latin called the Nove Diales. In this case, official 9-day mourning ceremonies take place, including a funeral mass and prayers for the deceased Pope. The Pope is usually buried in St. Peter's Basilica or another designated location. Then comes the calling of the conclave. The Camerlengo organizes the conclave, which must begin between 15 to 20 days after the Pope's death. What does the organization of the conclave look like? The Camerlengo oversees Vatican administration during the sede vacante, that is the vacancy period. The College of Cardinals meet in general congregations to discuss church matters before the conclave, including prayerful adoration moments and retreat periods. The Dean of the College of Cardinals traditionally presides over the conclave unless he is over 80, just as we have now, in which case another senior cardinal takes his place. The Master of Papal Liturgical Celebrations ensures that the conclave follows proper rituals. Then the Swiss Guard and Vatican security ensure that the Sistine Chapel is sealed off from the outside world. Who announces the new pope? During the conclave, once a new pope is elected and accepts his role, the proto-deacon, the most senior cardinal deacon, steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to make the formal announcement. The full Latin formula of the announcement states thus: Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum habemus papam, eminentissimum ac reverendissimum dominum. He mentions the baptismal name. Sanctae Romanae Ecclesiae Cardinalem, he mentions the surname. Qui sibi nomen imposuit, he mentions the papal name the Pope has chosen. Translated as, I announce to you a great joy, we have a Pope, the most eminent and most reverend Lord, his baptismal name, Cardinal of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, his surname, who has taken the name, he mentions the paper name. After the announcement, the new pope steps onto the balcony amidst cheers and applause from the crowd gathered at St. Peter's Square in anticipation. He then gives his first blessing, known as the Urbi et Orbi, to the city and to the world. Officially begins his pontificate. In conclusion, the process of electing a pope has transformed from a communal, informal selection in the early church to a highly structured and secretive conclave. Despite these changes, the core principle remains the same, that is, selecting a leader to guide the Catholic Church. While external influences, whether political, cultural, or technological, have shaped papal elections throughout history, the process continues to reflect the Church's commitment to apostolic succession and unity. Thank you for sharing these moments with us on Kairos series.